Hello and welcome to Sacred Sex with Trish. I am your host, Trish Causey, and I am I'm really looking forward to tonight's show. And tonight we're going to cover something that's very important in any aspect of sexuality, but especially with sacred sex, and that is the topic of recovering from religion and how to ditch shame and guilt around sex. So I do believe the chat rooms are open on Oneness Talk Radio's chat rooms on Facebook and YouTube. And I so look forward to your comments and your interaction. I really do love it. And if you don't mind, let me know where you're watching this from. Let me know what platform, maybe how you heard about this, because this is these are really important times right now, right? And what I have found is that one of the biggest hangups people have in about their sexuality, being sexual, even sleeping naked, they have this shame or guilt or just strange notions that have been instilled into them since childhood about their bodies, their genitals especially, and what they do with them. So I know that everybody is just getting the notifications that this is going. So in that, while you're finding out about this, that we are live. Again, my name is Trish Causey, and I am a sacred sex shaman and an artist, alchemist, and talk show host and producer, as you can tell. And this is my soul mission work, is to help not only awaken pleasure, which is so beautiful and so natural and is your birthright, but also to help heal sexual trauma. And there's been so much sexual trauma caused by religion, religious factions, religious teachings, skewed religious teachings. And you might be able to tell by now, I don't have a very good opinion of religion. And I did a video back in 2015 talking about the difference between spirituality and religion. That's on my YouTube, and you can certainly check that out, but I will recap that very briefly. So the word spirit, spirituality, spiritual, all comes from the Latin root word spiri, from the Latin verb spirare, which means to breathe. So spirit is breath, right? And if you've studied yoga, you're probably familiar with that. The pranayama is the study of the breath and how the breath is everything. Breath is I was going to say spirit, but breath is source, creator. It is the all. Without that, we really are nothing, because you can go weeks without food, days without water, but only a few minutes without breath. And this is why when you take in breath, you have that moment of inspirare or inspiration that is the breath of life. And when you have a great idea, you'll usually take in a breath, right? You'll go, oh my gosh, or eureka, and when you let out a breath, in Latin, ex is out or away from. So you expirare or expirate, expire. And when you do this process over and over and over again, the prefix in Latin for again is re, or back again is re. And so you respire, or as we call it, respiration. So the idea of spirit being as fundamental to your life here in the physical as your breath, that is a notion that goes back far, far, far beyond any of the institutionalized religions. So the word religion, another good old Latin combo term there. Again, the prefix re means back or again, and lig comes from ligere, which means to tie or bind. So religion, technically, according to the actual word itself, it actually is a series of, we call them sacraments now. Sacraments, I used to call it just your lines and choreography around the church. But the idea of what ties and binds you to the dogma of that church, or that denomination. It's really hard to get around saying the word religion. That belief system, that institutionalized belief system. So they'll have things. I was raised Catholic, so that's what I fall back on in terms of my experiences in religion. Although I have studied many religions, that was the one I was forced to pretend to be and act out choreography around the church every Sunday and during the week, because I went to Catholic schools too. But it's the idea of, you have the rosary, you have, which is a set of prayers, you have the sacraments, the Stations of the Cross, you have the Mass itself. It's all iconography and Christian mantras, right? It's Christian mantras and symbolism for you to keep returning to that dogma. And of course, what did they really want? They just wanted your money. They wanted you to tithe 10% of your income to support the institution, the system. Meanwhile, many, many, many abuses were going on and still go on. Pedophile Catholic priests, I firmly feel should get some, they should go through the criminal justice system here in the United States, at least. If you're going to sexually abuse children, I do believe that justice needs to be served, and you should not be allowed to be hidden, and certainly not sent to another parish where you will, have access to more children. But anyway, so no, I don't have a very good notion of religion. Are there some nice denominations? I'm sure there are. Are there nice denominations within Christianity? Yes, I know some people who are nice Christians. This isn't about that. What it is that religion as a whole tends to want to control people's lives, especially the sex. And you will see this in what's known as Hinduism, although Hinduism technically does not exist. There is no codified dogma, and there's no hierarchy. There's no Hindu pope. The closest you're going to get is Satana Dharma, the Vedic literatures, all the Vedic literature, the scriptures, but there is no true Hinduism. But Judaism, especially Christianity, the Abrahamic religions, while there are aspects of that where they say, oh, sex is great between married people, and the married people better be a man and a woman. So there are a lot of restrictions put on what sex is, what sex should be. Is sex good? Is sex bad? Even within a married couple, if you're having sex for fun, well, then that's not the point of sex. They want you to only come together for procreation. What they don't want is they did not want people to take these matters into their own hands and to have pleasure and feel good, because then they might get the idea that maybe you can have pleasure and feel good in other areas of your life, and that leads to people thinking they have a kind of freedom in their life. And religious institutions don't want you to know that you've got such freedom, which of course is yours as a God sovereign free being. In your sovereignty and in your power and in your mastery, you are allowed, especially this free will universe, you are allowed to do what you want. Now, of course, those of us who are service to others oriented and knowing that the law of karma exists, we don't want to hurt anybody else. And that, of course, comes into play with sex as well. So how do you overcome some of the blame, the shame, the guilt associated with religion? The first thing I would suggest is for you to just look inside yourself and see where are these different teachings, where do they actually affect you? What do you feel when you hear something like sex should only be between married people? So that means if you're not legally married, if you haven't had the preacher or the rabbi or the whoever come by and officiate your relationship as legit, what does that make you feel? When it comes to sex within marriage, and having sex for fun, I would think that would be a great thing. But what are your experiences within religion tell you about that? Like how are they trying to control you? Because that's what you're going to notice with everything, is that they're trying to control you and what you do with your body. Now, this goes into another discussion about body autonomy and self-determination, and what you feel, what you think you can do with your body, as is right for you. And of course, yes, that's going to get into the discussions about being pro-choice or, women's rights and that kind of thing, which we're not talking about exactly here today, right now. However, that is a part of it. Anytime you're discussing religion, choices, for, personal freedom, body autonomy, self-determination, you're going to talk about things like circumcision. Why? Why don't you want women to have their rights to their own body? So just try and see if you can feel, just go within and feel, where are you feeling restricted by this certain piece of dogma? Where are you feeling that the dogmatic institution or the dogma itself is trying to control you? Where are you not feeling free? Because again, you are a God sovereign free being. You are spirit in the physical. Religion is made up, right? Religion is created. It was created by men, very harsh men, obviously. And if you take religion, any religion, and look at its origins and take into consideration the context, the time and the place, especially the place in which it was created, you will see a correlation as to why they think the way they do. You'll see that. For instance, if you look at the Old Testament, and I'm not going to get into the whole, I'm not going to get into the false Yahweh thing, but if you look at the Old Testament and just see how harsh, downright mean Yahweh is, and then you look at the harsh life of the Israelites, Hebrews, I can't remember what they go through a few different name changes, but if you look at how harsh their life was, and then how harsh their idea of God is, Yahweh, it makes sense, right? Because in Genesis, you have this. I am the Lord your God, and you shall have no other gods before me. And, because I am a jealous and angry God, and I'll smite your ass. And it's right there. And it's like, if we were to take those very same words and those same qualities and put that on a man, a father, saying that to his wife and children, that if you can't have any friends outside of me, and telling his wife, you can't talk to any men besides me. You can't have any men friends, and if y'all disobey my word, I'll kill all of you. If you put those same qualities onto an actual human being man, you'd have women's rights groups saying, honey, you got to get out of there, get those kids and go. But somehow it's okay to put that onto God and expect people to be okay with that. And then fast forward, by the time you get around to Jesus and the situation for the Jews at the time, they were occupied by the Romans, but their idea of God was a little different, mainly because of the influence of the Romans, but also the teachings of Jesus, where Jesus said, no, Jesus said God is love. And so it's a very different perspective. And I have always found it interesting, being from the South, that whenever people want to, say God is love and let's just all get along, they quote the New Testament. But whenever they want to justify some injustice or racist or homophobic or misogynist belief system, they always quote the Old Testament. So it's just very interesting to me how people cherry pick. They pick and choose what part of the Bible they want to quote to justify whatever they think in the moment. But when you look at the time and the place of any religion, and you see that you can see the notion of gods or goddesses and how harsh or nice they are compared to the living situation of the people itself. And you do see some of that in the Vedic scriptures too, you know. So just as a reminder, the chat is open. I do see people watching. So feel free to ask questions. I love answering questions. So the first thing that I would suggest, like I said a few minutes ago, is that when you're trying to recover from religion, just really get in touch with your body. And where do you feel controlled? Where do you feel the dogma, the teachings, the sacraments are trying to still have a control over your physical body? Okay. And then the next thing that I would do is just understand that there's nothing to be guilty for. I mean, as long as you're not hurting about anybody, and even that's a judgment. But if you are, you've had premarital sex or even extramarital sex, homosexual sex, there's no judgment in any of that, and let's just keep all of it to consenting adults, right? We make a lot of dumb choices as humans, and we make a lot of so-called mistakes. But when you make a mistake the first time, is it really a mistake? If you're living your life and you make a choice, is it a mistake? If you keep doing the same dumb thing, maybe maybe it's a mistake. But even then, again, that's judgment still. So I would also look at the shame. Where have you been shamed because of religion? Have you been shamed because of your body? Because you're a woman? In the I don't think in the conservative in conservative Judaism they do this, but in Orthodox Judaism, women are not allowed into the temple on the week of their period because they're considered soiled. But they're also considered soiled the week before their period because they're going to have their period, and then the week after the period because they've been soiled. So 3 weeks out of the month, women are not allowed into the temple. They're not allowed in, to pray. They're not allowed to come in, which goes in and helps justify why women can't study in the Orthodox way of thinking. And so just being a woman is considered dirty and sinful and shameful, and you're soiled just by having this natural process of menstruation, which if you didn't menstruate, which means you're not fertile, well then you'd have a very difficult time finding a husband, so then you wouldn't be wanted anyway. So it's kind of like you can't win for losing, and do we really want to talk about original sin and Eve and the serpent and the apple and the tree of knowledge and the tree of life? Eve was the second wife of Adam. Lilith was the first consort, shall we say. And when false Yahweh, tried to put some restrictions on her, she basically said, "Screw you, buddy," and she left. And then, of course, she was demonized after that. And then Eve comes along, and when given the choice of eternal life or knowledge, she chose knowledge. When in the culture, women could not go study because they were women, and because they were women, they were soiled 3 weeks out of the month. It's very stupid. And yeah, I said that. So a lot of these things just don't make sense to us anymore. And you may find yourself having this quandary where your logical mind says, this is stupid, being told that, you can't use a condom because we were raised Catholic and a condom is birth control. That's, but condoms also, a safe sex practice. So if you don't use a condom and you're having sex, especially promiscuous sex, just, partner to partner sex, that can be dangerous. And your logical mind will tell you, hey, this is, these religious doctrines a lot of times just don't make any sense. But the upbringing that you've had, especially if you were raised in it, it's very difficult to get away from that, all of that guilt and shame. When the Jesuits realized this centuries ago, in fact, they had a saying, give us the boy, we'll give you the man. They figured out that if you can get a hold of a boy, because, they were the ones that were allowed to study. Yes. But they knew that if you can get a child by the age of about 6, they can read and write at that point, or they have the capability to start reading and writing, and you indoctrinate them into the strictures of the institution, in this case, the Christian church, which later became known as the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. But they knew if you can get them as a child, and because that's when the brain is still, they didn't understand it like this, but basically the child brain, it still deals in concrete thoughts. The child brain is not able to handle abstract thoughts. And so the Jesuits were able to figure out that if you start teaching a child these dogmatic, very hardline positions from that age of about 5 or 6, then they're going to have those belief systems the rest of their life. And it's going to be very difficult for them to get out of it. And that's what a lot of people find themselves in, this situation where their logical mind is telling them this is not right, or this is just stupid, or this is dangerous. And yet the programming, the deep programming of religion and their institutions they were raised in are still making them repeat these patterns. It is deep programming. So anybody want to ask a question? Because I see you. I know that this is, I know that this topic is not a fun topic. And, it's certainly not as much fun as talking about orgasm. But let's go ahead and talk about orgasm, because that's what religion doesn't want you to experience. So let's get away from the Abrahamic stuff and let's go back to India, right? When I first lived here, because I live in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, which is a beautiful artist hamlet on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I grew up doing dance here and voice and whatever. And so I was so happy to live here. In 2010, I moved here. And across the street was this little Hare Krishna restaurant. And so I got to know Maharani, she's the chef, and I got to know some of the people in their community, and of course go to temples to experience kirtan and all of that, and the Bhagavad Gita lessons and all that kind of stuff. So it's really good stuff. But one of the peculiar things, because this was they had this restaurant right across the street from where I lived, and so I was over there all the time. And I had never really had Indian food. And this is technically was not true Indian food, because one of the reasons it's different is because, well, besides that it's vegetarian and some Indian food, you do have chicken, like tikka masala and all that. But in the Hare Krishna religion, yeah, it's a religion. In the Hare Krishnas, they don't eat onions or garlic. They use a spice called asafoetida, which is a processed form of a root called devil's dung, because it smells so bad. But they use asafoetida to kind of give that oniony garlic flavor, because in the religion, they don't eat onions or garlic. Now, I thought this was really strange because in Kundalini yoga, especially of Yogi Bhajan, you're required to eat onions and garlic. Like that's one of the three. What's the other one? I think it's a parsley or something. But you're required to eat onions and garlic. It's two of the three foods you're required to eat under his system. And he was Sikh. Yogi Bhajan was he was Greek, Sikh, not Greek, Sikh. And so I asked, why don't y'all eat onions and garlic? And I was told, oh, well, it's just considered common. And that did not make sense to me because in the Hare Krishnas, when they're cooking, they don't taste the food. Because tasting the food is, because when you taste food, like when you cook, you taste food and you add salt or you add pepper, you add some cayenne, you want it to taste spicy and good. And their idea of tasting the food to make it taste better is kind of it being an ego that Krishna, Vishnu, Krishna, but specifically Krishna, provided this food for you. You should just be grateful for whatever it is, And so I just thought it was odd. Like, okay, you don't season it. Okay. But then to say onions and garlic are common, didn't Krishna give you the onions and garlic too? Well, it was much, much later that I happened upon a video of a guest speaker at one of the Bhagavad Gita lessons. I think this was actually, it was somewhere here in the United States. It was not at the Culver City ISKCON temple in LA, because I've been to that one many times. They have the best kirtan on Sunday evenings. It is amazing. But anyway, and this guest speaker was talking about how onions and garlic inflame the senses. It inflames the passions. It makes heat rise in the body. And this reminded me of one of my friends in the Hare Krishna community here locally. She and her partner, they got legally married and they did not have sex except for the purpose of procreation. So it was right back to that. The religion is controlling the sex and what people do with their bodies. And while I do appreciate the Hare Krishnas for a lot of the work that they do, and there are a couple of things that I'm like, really, y'all, could you not do that? Because I really like you otherwise. Great music and great people, but these notions about sex and sexuality, some of these actually are derived from the Vedas. And again, if you heard me talk about Tantra and how the Tantrics, the people that would become the Tantrics, the Tantras actually evolved out of, or as a reaction to how strict the Vedas were becoming, how the Vedic scriptures were really wanting to control people's lives on like every level. Like there was no individual or personal freedom. And so the Tantrics came and said, you know what? Screw this. We're not going to be doing this. And then you have the Tantra just go off and create the wonderful world of Tantra, different branches and rituals and sex rituals and all that jazz. So, so I just find it very, very interesting. And you're going to see this kind of control in all aspects of a serious dogmatic religion, regardless of what the religion is and where it is. But that was just one of the things that I have noticed in studying religions. I studied Indian religions at Tulane. I have been an amateur student of religions my entire life, mainly because I was so emotionally scarred by being raised Catholic. So it's just really interesting to me to see that when you look at the time and the place when a religion's main dogma, main doctrines were written, created, or passed, and just to compare that to the living conditions of the people. If it's a harsh religion, oftentimes it's a harsh living conditions. And unfortunately, those harsh doctrines from that harsh living conditions, those are the ones that seem to have been passed down for 5,000, 6,000 years, and we're still being affected by them today, you know? So, for me, personal freedom is so important. And body autonomy, self-determination. And that's not just about choice with my body and deciding when or if I become a mother, but it's about deciding, who I have sex with, when I have sex, before marriage, after marriage. What if I don't ever want to be married, or another person? What if they don't want to be married? It's just about, when do you step up and think for yourself? And how much of your power do you give over to other people? That's one of the things that I find interesting about tradition, when people say, oh, well, this is the way we've always done it. Or, this is the tradition. This is just the way we do things. And I laugh at that, because tradition is when you structure your life around the wishes and the dictates of dead people. Why would you do that? Why do you need the dictates of dead people, their laws, their mandates, their unhappiness? Because clearly these people were not happy, or they were having too much of a good time, and the powers that be didn't want them to have a good time, because again, that just all goes back to control, right? So, when you're trying to overcome religion, and you're trying to deal with the guilt, oh, this feels good. Oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. What if it's consenting adults? Why not? If you shame, there's shame around the body. I've heard of women who can't even shower themselves. When they're in the shower, they have one of those detachable showers, so they can just wash their genitals, because they don't want to use their hands, not even through a washcloth, to wash themselves, because they've been so indoctrinated that touching the genitals is sinful. They don't want anything to feel good. And this is insane. And anyway, if you are watching this, feel free to ask a question, because otherwise I'm just going to keep rambling. But the chat room, as far as I know, the chats are open on the Facebook page and the YouTube channel. But it's been, it has really affected me personally. I think I talked a little bit about my background. My background, I was molested by a neighbor for 2 years when I was a child, and my molester was a female. So with the indoctrination of the church, talking about the evils of premarital sex and homosexual sex, I just thought I was a child lesbian and I would be going to hell. Nothing I could ever do could save me from the ravages of an eternity in the burning flames of hell with all kinds of brimstone, because I was my only frame of reference was that I was a child lesbian. It wasn't until I was 20 years old that I realized what it actually was, that I had been molested for 2 years. And I'll never forget that moment, because I was working. I was working overnight as a switchboard operator at a casino. And one night I was working, and I just realized, oh my God, I was molested. Hey, Pawan, it's so good to see you. Thank you for leaving a comment. If you have a question, go ahead and ask a question. I do not answer fashion questions, though. I remember that. But yeah, so it's really amazing, though. So there I was, 20 years old, and if you had asked me, hey, Trish, what do you think about heaven? And I would not have had an answer, because I was still kind of in that mind frame of, well, I'm going to hell, right? which is funny because, the word hell actually comes from the Norse goddess Hel. And it's just the underworld. It's not the fire and brimstone kind of thing. But anyway, it was just like, whoa. And when I had that moment, that realization of, oh my God, I was molested. Like, it took me a minute. It took me several minutes to just kind of sit with that at work to kind of process, oh my gosh, I was molested. So it was really difficult. So the topic tonight is recovering from religion. If you're just tuning in, because oh yeah, that's right. They don't have the title up on the YouTube. But anyway, so yeah. So tonight the topic is recovering from religion. So if you're just now tuning in, I see some people popping on. Go ahead and leave a question if you would like to leave a question about this topic or any topic. Doesn't have to be this topic. Oh, it says somebody's typing. Hope you get a good question in. But yeah, so just look in your own life and your own experiences about where religion has affected your sex life. And oh, here's a good one. Michael says, thoughts on the concepts of atheism in regard to sex. Well, the word atheism, I was actually thinking about this the other day, because for a while I called myself atheist, obviously a pagan witch and tantrika, but an atheist, because the word atheist does not mean against God. The Latin prefix of a, or actually it's a, it means not. It does not mean against. It means not. And so theist, of course, has to do with God. But so to be an atheist is not against God. It's just that you don't believe in God. And it's not that I didn't believe in God because I'm obviously pagan, so I like lots of gods and goddesses, right? But it was the idea that I did not believe in, the old guy with the beard on a throne on a cloud kind of Judeo-Christian idea of God that the Christians actually get from Jupiter, Zeus, maybe a little Odin in there as well, back in the official, Christian era. I didn't believe that at all. And also because it was very harsh and very mean, especially toward women. So I do find it interesting that so atheists are people who do not believe in the traditional system of religion and cosmogony based on deities or a deity, a supreme God kind of thing, creating everything. So my thoughts on the concepts of atheism in terms of sacred sex or how atheism affects your sexuality. I think in a lot of ways that atheism will, because I've been in atheist groups, I've seen how sarcastic they are. I've seen how they have no respect for religion, obviously, and I don't like religion, but then they also don't have respect for spirituality either. And so I know a lot of atheists, and they would not have any, they would ridicule the idea of sacred sex as well. And in the very first show here for Oneness Talk Radio, I went into sacred sex and how sacred sex is the process of anchoring the divine within yourself, because you are the divine in the physical, and then you see the divine in your partner. You see the divine in your partner through the filter of the divine within yourself. And so then that union, as you come together in Hieros Gamos or Maituna or sacred union, whatever, you want to call that, it really is about union with the all. And I think in a lot of ways, In a lot of ways, atheism, atheists, because they don't have any, they're not agnostic. I mean, true atheists, and there are very few true atheists. Most people who call themselves atheists are actually agnostic. And, agnostic means to not know, right? The prefix "a," as we just said, means not. Gnostic, nos, means knowledge. And it's the root of the word gospel, the good news, right? And so an agnostic is someone who just does not know. They don't know for sure what they do believe, but they don't know for sure what they don't believe, or maybe they know for sure what they don't believe, but they don't know what they do believe. And so it just becomes this. I think it's a personal search for a lot of agnostics, which is cool, but for atheists, they're not going to necessarily respect the spiritual side of sex, that, seeing the divine within yourself and the divine with the other. It's very interesting because I remember this topic coming up about love. Well, if you're atheist, then how can you love anything? How can you love a person? How can you fall in love? Because love does not come from here. Love does not come from the 3D physical world. Love comes from the higher dimensions, and the, unconditional love, 5D and up and above and above and above. And so it's very interesting concept. So I know I'm just going around and around because now I'm really thinking about it, and I'm a Libra. I don't want to be mean. I don't want to just come out and say, first of all, true atheists are rare. Most people who kind of call themselves atheists are more agnostic than atheists. But what I have noticed in true atheists is that they have the same hardline, intolerance, fundamentalist attitude toward there is nothing on the other side of this. This is it. We just, we're born and we live and we die, and then that's all there is. But so they're very fundamentalist in what they do think. And so it's kind of very intolerant, very narrow-minded, just like fundamentalist religionists, like fundamentalist Christians. So Pawan says, do you believe in astrology, madam? Do you think astrology helps us to increase all? Well, Pawan, I'm assuming you might be interested in Vedic astrology. I've always been very interested in astrology. And, astrology is the study of the stars. Okay. But I was always busy learning so many other things. I never really devoted any time to learning astrology. I am now trying to learn more about astrology because the more I've seen and the more I've experienced about planetary alignments, retrogrades, stations, planets going direct and station, all that stuff, it really does affect. Now, one of the things how I came to my own conclusions about this is that because I have not studied astrology, and then I would hear, well, this happened, this happened, this happened. Like, well, wow, this is what I experienced. That's what I experienced. This is what I experienced. And I keep doing that. Like right now with the Schumann's resonance, I don't watch ahead of time for the Schumann's resonance. I wait until I am just either wired with energy or I'm just like knocked flat out, exhausted, and no amount of sleep makes me feel energetic or rejuvenated. And then I go look and see what happened to the Schumann's resonance. And sure enough, we've had spikes, like huge spikes that day or those days. So what I am experiencing with astrology is that I have just learned that, yeah, astrology is real. Astrology is absolutely legit. I do believe that you need to be listening to a really good interpreter of astrology. So they need to not only understand what's going on, which any computer printout can tell you what the alignments are right now, but to understand how it affects you and why these alignments affect you, you have to actually understand the mythology that all of these astronomical bodies are named after, because they have personalities. And in some people see each of these like the planets in our solar system, they're named Neptune for a reason, Saturn for a reason, Jupiter for a reason, Mars, Venus, Mercury for a reason, and little Pluto. I don't care what Neil deGrasse Tyson thinks. Pluto has always been here. He's always been one of us, right? I make fun of Neil deGrasse all the time for that. But he got hate mail from third graders that he should have. So, but it's not just those, there's a whole lot of astrology happening. In fact, yesterday with the new moon and the solar eclipse, we have the winter solstice coming up, Yule's coming up. And then today Chiron went direct, and Chiron is the wounded healer. And so, I wasn't going to do any kind of trying to manifest anything like yesterday, like I normally would on a new moon, because I wanted Chiron to turn himself around, start going direct, so we can get out of this space of woundings and really, really be ready to move forward into the new year. So yeah, I mean, first of all, I don't believe in anything. All right. I'm interested in a lot of things, and the things that work for me, I study them and I use my personal experiences, and then I have knowledge. All right. Because beliefs can change. Beliefs can change based on what you're thinking in the moment. But once you have knowledge, once you have especially personal experiential based knowledge, no one can take that from you. And whatever's popular next week in Cosmo or People magazine, I mean, that's not going to affect what I know to be true from my own experiences. So yeah. So do I believe in astrology? No. Do I know for myself that astrology is absolutely legit? Damn right. Yeah. So you're welcome. Okay. And so another question. So in your mind, which religion belief system is more appreciative, open to sexual freedoms, especially since so many religions put stigmas on the concepts of sex? Well, I love how you put that, because again, religion is man-made and it exists specifically to control, which goes against your free will, your sovereignty, your individual mastery, your individual power. And yet your free will, you do have the free will to choose that. The problem comes when people raise their children in the religions, and then the religious factions like the Jesuits realize, hey, if we can indoctrinate the kids, then we know that we're more than likely going to have them as, one of us or in our throng when they're adults. And the important thing there is, especially back in medieval times, let's say with the Christian church, that you had warriors for God, you had people, the whole the church, you had the countries, the kingdoms, and you had the king, and then you had the aristocracy, the nobles, the knights, everybody swearing fealty to somebody above them, someone higher up in the food chain, which basically meant most everybody was somehow obligated to fight, die, or tithe, to king or the pope or the church. And so it's all about controlling. It's about creating an audience for later. I'm thinking of theater now, because one of the reasons why we have children's programs in theater, in dance, in opera, is so that we have an audience in 20, 30, 40 years. We need people on the stage. We need people with, we need butts in seats 20 years from now to keep the art form alive. Religion does the same exact thing. So which system's going to be most appreciative? Well, anything pagan, People who dance naked around bonfires under the full moon with drummers and musicians and a good stew cooking in the cauldron, that's going to be the ones that love sex in terms of true freedom of sex. So yeah, being a pagan witch, awesomeness. And of course, the tantrics love sex. Tantrics, have all kinds of rituals and pujas, and the sex rituals, especially the maituna, the sacred union sex ritual. But again, that's very controlled. Like, I mean, every aspect of that is controlled. In fact, and I can't remember the exact way it's phrased right now, but one belief is that there's no true tantric practice if there's not a red cloth on the floor. So especially for a sex ritual, if you want to have a tantric sex ritual, which of course is not just about the sex. Again, it goes back to the union of the divine, anchoring the divine, embodying the divine, recognizing the divine in someone else, and then coming together. And there's all kinds of stuff you do in the process of that. And most of it is not very sexy, actually. But none of that counts if there's not a red cloth on the floor, having the mantras that you say, and how many times do you say them, and you waving the incense or the candle around or the flame around. I mean, how which direction you circle the space in, or when you're doing your puja, your fire puja especially. So it's very controlled, very open to sex, but the rituals themselves, the puja itself is very controlled. So I like aspects of that. I love elements of that, but no, I'd much rather be good old Irish, Scottish, Northwestern European, pagan, witchy rituals. I love those. Good old orgies. Those are the most fun. Theater orgies too. I love those too. Yes, very nice. So somewhere between like the belly dancing out on the beach under the full moon, theater orgies, all of that. I have an eclectic background, but it's the most fun, but it's what makes you feel alive and free and just blissful and happy and joyful. Religion does not want you to feel any of that. Religion exists to control you. And when you don't abide by their teachings, that's when they come out with the guilt, the blame, the shame, and then you have to, come see a sacred sex shaman to overcome all of that so that you can enjoy sex like you're supposed to. It's supposed to be beautiful and wonderful and blissful, and it is your birthright to experience pleasure and bliss. Oh, Pawan, he got me a coffee. That's so sweet. A little hot chocolate. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. Oh, wow. We only have a few more minutes. Anybody last minute questions? Anything else? I hope that was helpful. But it's interesting that you did ask about atheism, because I thought about that briefly. But the whole idea of atheism is the exact opposite of sacred sex, because sacred, of course, has to do with anchoring divinity. And even though I still feel weird using words like divinity. Well, in the South, divinity is a dessert you can only make in the winter, because if you make it any other time here in Mississippi, the humidity is too high. So divinity is a dessert. But anyway, but using words like holy, I mean, I still have problems like that with that. Like even like holy places or holy basil. I'm like, isn't there another name we can use? So yeah, but maybe that's something we can do, is I can, see if I can find an atheist to come on and talk about how they would view something like sacred sex. Okay, we only have a couple of minutes. Any other questions? Any other questions? But one of the things I am going to do a show on is sacred space. And that's going to come up probably after the new year. And we'll talk about how to create a sacred space for you to have and experience sacred sex. So, okay, I do not see any more questions at this time. So I am so grateful that you joined me for this show. I know it's a little weird. It's kind of a difficult topic because this goes to childhood, possibly childhood wounds, how our parents raised us and why the heck did they do this to us kind of thing. But yeah, so maybe we could revisit this at some point. And for now, just understand and know you are beautiful and you are wonderful. There is no such thing as sin. That we come here in the physical to have all kinds of experiences, and we have free will here. And what we're doing now is just trying to make the best choices, choices that are in service to humanity rather than just service to ourselves or ego and that kind of thing. So I am very grateful that you are here. And to learn more about me and what I do, you can go to my website, trishcausey.com, TRISHCAUSEY.com. And if you're interested in working with me, just let me know. And of course, you can find me on all the social media, usually just my name, Trish Causey. And all right, with that, I would just like to remind you that I love you. And if in doubt, only love is real. That should be the guiding light for all of us. Only love is real. Okay. I love y'all. Mwah. Y'all take care. And I will see you next time. Bye.